In December of 2009, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. It started in his lungs, and by mid-March it had spread to his spine, leg, back, and brain. On April 23rd, my mom called me while I was on my break from work. "Val, you need to come home," she said, her voice shaking. She sounded like if anything were to touch her, she might shatter. "Why?" I asked, afraid of the answer. "I don't really have time to talk about it. You just need to come home as soon as you can. I'm taking your dad to the hospital and making him comfortable." "What do you mean?" I asked, fighting back tears, even though I knew exactly what it meant. All she said in response was, "Just come home." I went to my apartment, haphazardly threw things into a suitcase, and left for home. On the 3-hour drive home, my mind was racing and my hands were shaking. I couldn't even listen to the radio. I drove in silence, preparing myself for whatever was ahead. The next day, I went to the hospital to see my dad. I couldn't believe that the thin, lifeless man that was laying in the bed was my father. I felt a lump start to grow in my throat, and I tried so hard to fight it, but I just couldn't. I immediately broke down. I crawled into a chair next to his bed and cried until I was exhausted from it. For the next week, I spent every day and every night in the hospital by his side. I was running on just a few hours of sleep at most, and my back hurt from trying to get comfortable in that awful hospital chair. The only time I ever left his side was to go home and shower or get something to eat. He slept all the time, and maybe once or twice a day would open his eyes and look around. He couldn't talk and was too weak to lift his arms to hug me. Whenever he woke up, even if it was just for 20 seconds, I would rush to his side and make sure he saw me. He would look up at me with his pale blue eyes, mouth the words, "I love you," squeeze my hand and close his eyes. That was all I needed. Things were harder on my mom. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and hear her weeping at his side, telling him it was okay to let go. She didn't want him to hurt or suffer anymore. When I heard her do this, I felt my heart break just a little bit more than it was already broken. On April 30th, 2010, he passed. I watched the breaths he took become further and further apart until his chest stopped rising and falling altogether. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. I felt like I should, but I was emotionally and mentally exhausted. I also felt like I had to be strong for my mom. As I held my mother's hand and watched them lower the shiny brown casket we picked out for him into the ground, I took a deep breath and thought to myself, this will not break you. It will be insurmountably and undescribably hard, but you have to be strong and use every single day as an opportunity to make him proud. The loss of my father really put things into perspective for me. Things that seemed so important before seemed petty in the grand scheme of life. I began to appreciate life more and the people in it who had been so strong for me, even when I felt like I couldn't stand on my own 2 feet. Ever since I was little, my dad always told me it was his dream to see me graduate college because I would be the first generation to do so. Before he started chemo, he told the doctor, "My daughter graduates from college in a little over a year, and I want to be able to watch her walk across stage." He didn't make it to my graduation, but I know he was still there. When I saw my mom afterwards, we ran to each other with tears in our eyes, and we threw our arms around one another. We didn't have to say anything. I learned so much, and am still learning so much about myself and how I need to look at life. Some days are harder than others, especially the ones when I think about how he won't be able to walk me down the aisle or be here as a grandfather to my children. But then I remember that I'm using each day as an opportunity to make him proud, and I know he's not physically here, but I still see a little bit of him in every single day.